What if the most intimate thing you've ever experienced, your own consciousness, isn't just a byproduct of neurons firing, but something far stranger, something that slips into the very laws of quantum physics, the same rules that govern atoms, electrons, and particles that blink in and out of existence? Think about it. You can explain a heartbeat with biology. You can explain a computer with circuits. But when it comes to explaining awareness, that raw, subjective feeling of being, science hits a wall. The brain looks like a machine, but your inner life doesn't feel like machine code. It feels alive, immediate, irreducible. Now here's the twist. In the past few decades, serious physicists and neuroscientists have started whispering a possibility that sounds almost forbidden, that consciousness itself may be linked to quantum processes inside the brain. Not just chemistry, not just electricity, but quantum-level phenomena that defy classical logic. Imagine that your thoughts don't emerge from a rigid machine, but from quantum superpositions inside microscopic structures of your neurons. Imagine that your awareness depends on the same physics that allows particles to exist in two states at once, or to become entangled across distance. It sounds outrageous, like sci-fi, but it's not. There are real experiments hinting that biology can sustain quantum states, even in warm, noisy environments like the human brain. Photosynthesis in plants, navigation in birds, memory in molecules. And if life already uses quantum tricks, why not the mind itself? So here's the question. If consciousness is quantum, what does that mean about who, or what, we really are? When people first hear the phrase quantum consciousness, they often imagine something mystical, like the soul floating around in a cloud of particles. But the idea is actually more grounded than it sounds. At its core, it's a scientific attempt to explain how the brain generates awareness, using the rules of quantum mechanics. Here's the basic problem. The brain is made of about 86 billion neurons. Each neuron communicates with others through electrical impulses and chemical messengers. That much we know. But if you take that system and model it like a computer, inputs go in, outputs come out, you're still left with a mystery. Where, in all that activity, does the feeling of experience appear? This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. Why should the firing of neurons produce anything more than complex information processing? Why should it feel like something to be alive? Enter quantum mechanics. Unlike classical physics, which deals in clear, predictable cause and effect, the quantum world is defined by uncertainty, superposition, and entanglement. And some researchers suggest that the brain may be taking advantage of these principles to create the richness of conscious awareness. One of the most famous proposals comes from physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. Their theory, called orchestrated objective reduction, OR, suggests that inside the brain's neurons are tiny structures called microtubules. These aren't just scaffolding to hold the cell's shape. They might be small quantum processors, capable of sustaining delicate superpositions. In this view, consciousness arises when quantum states collapse inside microtubules, linking the probabilistic nature of the quantum world with the unified experience of awareness. It's a bold idea. Critics argue that the brain is too warm and wet for fragile quantum states to survive. Normally, quantum superpositions collapse quickly in noisy environments. And yet, experiments in biology keep surprising us. Plants, for instance, seem to use quantum coherence in photosynthesis to transfer energy with almost perfect efficiency. Birds appear to use quantum entanglement to navigate Earth's magnetic field. If evolution can harness quantum effects in leaves and feathers, could it also have shaped the machinery of the brain? This is where the real tension lies. If consciousness depends on quantum processes, then awareness is not just an emergent property of matter, it is tied to the very structure of reality itself. But here's the kicker. If that's true, then consciousness might not just arise from the brain, it might extend beyond it. We grow up believing a simple story. The brain is like a biological computer, and consciousness is just what happens when enough neurons fire in the right way. It feels neat, mechanical, safe. But here's the problem. That story doesn't match reality. If consciousness were only classical, like a machine, then every decision you make would be fully determined by physical cause and effect. Your sense of choice would be an illusion. Free will would evaporate, but you do feel like you choose. You feel like there's something unpredictable, alive, creative in the way your mind works. Classical physics can't explain that spark. Quantum mechanics, however, is built on indeterminacy. At its heart, it says the future is not fully determined until an observation is made. That's a radically different foundation for the mind. Let's test our intuition. Picture a supercomputer programmed with every detail about your brain, all your neurons, all your chemical reactions. In theory, this computer could predict your next move with absolute accuracy. Now ask yourself, does that feel true? Or does it feel like in some fundamental way, your choices cannot be fully computed? That gap between prediction and lived experience is where quantum theories of consciousness begin to shine. Quantum systems are non-local, meaning information can be shared across distance instantly through entanglement. Imagine for a moment that parts of your brain, or even your mind itself, are entangled in ways we don't yet understand. That would mean your thoughts aren't just contained in the 3 pounds of matter in your skull, but woven into the deeper structure of reality. Suddenly, the self stops being a box inside your head and starts to look more like a field, stretching out, subtle but present. And here's the illusion-breaking moment. The very idea that the brain is separate from the universe collapses. In a classical view, you're a closed system, locked in your body. In a quantum view, your consciousness could be partially non-local, fundamentally connected to phenomena beyond you. What feels like your thought may not be fully yours in isolation. It may be entangled with something larger. This doesn't mean magic. It doesn't mean ghosts. It means the boundary between inner world and outer world is not as solid as we've been told. The self is not a fortress. It might be a quantum network node, flickering with probabilities, collapsing into awareness one moment at a time. But if that's the case, if consciousness truly emerges from quantum mechanics, then we need to ask, can we find evidence strong enough to prove it? If we're going to take quantum consciousness seriously, we need more than philosophy. We need evidence, a ladder of facts and discoveries that at least suggest this path is worth climbing. And surprisingly, that ladder already exists. Step 1. Quantum biology. For decades, scientists thought quantum effects only mattered at microscopic scales, inside particle accelerators or ultra-cold labs. But then biology crashed the party. Plants, for example, move energy through their cells with near-perfect efficiency thanks to quantum coherence. Birds like robins navigate Earth's magnetic field, possibly by exploiting entangled electron pairs in their eyes. Even our sense of smell might involve quantum tunneling, as molecules jump across receptors in ways classical physics can't explain. Life, it seems, is already fluent in quantum tricks. Step 2. The brain as a quantum candidate. If biology can play with quantum mechanics, why not the brain? Microtubules, those tiny protein structures inside neurons, are one candidate. Hameroff and Penrose argue that these microtubules can sustain coherent quantum states long enough to influence neural firing patterns. In fact, anesthetics, the very drugs that can switch consciousness off, are known to bind directly to microtubules. That's not proof, but it's a curious correlation. Shut down quantum coherence and you shut down awareness. Step 3. Physics and collapse. Penrose goes further, suggesting that quantum state reduction, the collapse of a superposition into a definite outcome, is not random, but linked to the very fabric of space-time. In his view, every collapse is a fundamental event, and consciousness emerges from orchestrated collapses inside the brain. If true, your awareness is not just produced by the brain, but connected to the deep structure of reality itself. Step 4. Experimental hints. We don't yet have a smoking gun, but there are experiments underway. Neuroscientists are looking for quantum signatures in microtubules using cutting-edge imaging. Others are testing whether neurons exhibit non-classical correlations, the kind you'd expect if entanglement were involved. Even more radical projects are exploring whether general anesthesia works by disrupting quantum processes rather than just chemical pathways. The data is young, incomplete, but it's not silence. The noise of possibility is growing louder. So here's the unsettling takeaway. Across biology, neuroscience, and physics, the pieces fit together just enough to keep the hypothesis alive. Not proven, not dismissed, balanced on the edge of discovery. But this leaves us with a bigger question, one that can't be dodged. If consciousness really does spring from quantum reality, then what are we? Machines of flesh, or quantum beings, inseparable from the cosmos itself? If consciousness really is tied to quantum mechanics, then the implications are not just scientific, they're existential. It would mean that awareness isn't just an emergent property of meat and electricity. It's not a lucky accident of evolution. Instead, it may be woven into the very foundation of reality. Think about what that suggests. If the collapse of quantum states is tied to consciousness, then every moment of awareness is not merely happening inside your head, but is entangled with the universe itself. You are not just watching reality. In some profound sense, you are reality experiencing itself. This destroys the old mechanistic picture of humans as machines. It also blurs the line between matter and mind. If physics cannot be separated from experience, then maybe the universe has never been just a cold, dead machine. Maybe it has always been, at some level, awake. But not everyone buys this. Many neuroscientists argue that the mind can, in principle, be fully explained by classical computation. To them, the quantum leap is unnecessary. They see consciousness as an emergent illusion, created by the complexity of neural networks. According to this view, the mystery exists only because we haven't mapped the brain's circuits thoroughly enough. Once we do, the magic will vanish. And yet, critics of this reductionist view fire back with a simple question. Even if you map every neuron, every synapse, every spike of activity, where in that map does the feeling of red exist? Where in the circuits do you find pain, joy, or wonder? Information processing is not the same thing as subjective experience. Something more is at play. The philosophical shockwave doesn't stop there. If consciousness is a quantum phenomenon, then free will might regain its footing. In a purely deterministic universe, choice is an illusion. But in a quantum universe, outcomes are not fully determined until they occur. Consciousness, then, could be the active participant collapsing possibilities into reality. In other words, maybe your decisions are not pre-written code. Maybe you really are co-creating the future moment by moment. And here's the deepest cut. If consciousness is quantum, it may not be confined to brains at all. Awareness might exist in varying degrees wherever quantum processes occur. Suddenly, the gap between humans and the cosmos narrows. The universe stops looking like a machine and starts looking like a network of conscious processes. But if that's true, if awareness is embedded in the laws of physics themselves, then the next question is even more explosive. What future doors does this open for science and technology? And for us? If consciousness really is rooted in quantum mechanics, the future of science takes a turn that is nothing short of revolutionary. It means we won't just be studying brains, we'll be studying the quantum fabric of reality itself as a living system. And that opens doors we can barely imagine. Start with technology. Quantum computers already promise to solve problems classical machines can't touch, by leveraging superposition and entanglement. But what if the brain is itself a kind of biological quantum computer? Understanding it could give us the blueprint for conscious machines, not just artificial intelligence that simulates thought, but AI that actually experiences awareness. Imagine a world where we don't just build machines that calculate, but machines that feel. Then there's medicine. If consciousness is tied to quantum processes in microtubules, then disorders like Alzheimer's or schizophrenia might one day be treated at the quantum level, not just chemically. Instead of patching symptoms, we could stabilize the very quantum states that sustain awareness. Anesthesia, too, might become more precise, unlocking the mystery of how drugs can switch off consciousness so cleanly. And consider neuroscience itself. Right now, brain scans track electrical activity, blood flow, and metabolism. But if quantum coherence plays a role, we may need tools that can read quantum states inside neurons. Imagine brain imaging that doesn't just show you which regions light up, but captures the actual quantum patterns of thought itself. That would turn the study of the mind into a study of quantum reality in action. But perhaps the most dramatic horizon is philosophical. If consciousness is quantum, then the self may not be locked inside the skull at all. It may extend, faintly, subtly, into the quantum field. That means communication, memory, even creativity could one day tap into deeper layers of the universe. The boundary between individual minds and the cosmos could become porous. What we now call intuition or inspiration might one day be explained as genuine quantum connections. And here's where it gets even stranger. If consciousness is quantum, it could, in principle, survive the death of neurons, the way quantum information survives in entanglement. That doesn't mean immortality, but it does mean that our awareness might not be as fragile or as private as we think. So here's the cliffhanger. If the future of consciousness research truly goes quantum, then the biggest discovery won't just be about the brain. It will be about reality itself, and whether the universe is not just something we live in, but something that is aware of us. So let's bring this home. What does all of this quantum physics, microtubules, entanglement actually mean for you? Why should you care whether your consciousness is classical or quantum? Start with the simplest truth. If your awareness is quantum, then you are not just a byproduct of brain matter. You are not just chemistry. You are a phenomenon tied to the same laws that govern the birth of stars and the dance of particles. That means your inner life, your thoughts, your emotions, your sense of self, is not trivial. It's not an accident. It's a manifestation of the deepest structure of the universe. Think about the moments when you felt a sudden flash of intuition, a creative breakthrough, or a connection with someone that seemed to transcend words. Classical neuroscience often shrugs and says, that's just neurons firing. But if consciousness is quantum, then maybe those flashes are windows into a larger web, hints that your mind is tapping into connections beyond the limits of biology. It also reshapes how you see choice. Every decision you make, whether to change careers, to forgive someone, to take a risk, feels alive with uncertainty. If the brain were just a deterministic machine, those choices would already be written before you made them. But in a quantum view, each choice really is the collapse of multiple possible futures into one. That means your decisions matter deeply. You're not following a script. You're participating in the unfolding of reality. And then there's how you see yourself in the world. The classical story says you're separate, a mind locked inside a body, sealed off from everything else. But the quantum story suggests something different. You may be entangled, interconnected with reality in ways you can't yet measure. That doesn't mean telepathy or mysticism. It means your very existence is relational. Your awareness is stitched into the same fabric that holds galaxies together. This doesn't hand us easy answers. It doesn't give us a neat instruction manual for life, but it does shift perspective. Suddenly, being human isn't just surviving, working, and dying. It's participating in a cosmic process of awareness that stretches deeper than we ever imagined. And that leaves us with one final step to take, to ask the ultimate question. If consciousness is quantum, what does that make us, in the grandest sense? Machines of matter, or something far stranger? Stand still for a moment and pay attention, not to the outside world, but to the simple fact that you are aware right now. That flicker of presence, the undeniable feeling of being here, alive, observing. Classical science struggles to explain it, but quantum physics whispers a different story. Maybe your awareness is not a byproduct, but a fundamental feature of reality itself. If that's true, then every breath, every choice, every thought becomes something larger than biology. You're not just neurons firing. You're not just a collection of chemical reactions. You're a living expression of the same laws that weave photons, electrons, and galaxies together. Picture yourself walking through a busy city street, cars rushing past, people on phones, lights changing at every corner. Amid all the noise, what's the one thing you can't doubt? That you are there, aware, experiencing. And if consciousness is truly quantum, then that awareness is not isolated in your head. It is part of the cosmic fabric itself, a note in a universal symphony. That possibility doesn't just change science. It changes how you see yourself. It reframes what it means to be alive, to choose, to matter. Because maybe, in the deepest sense, you're not simply in the universe. The universe is in you, awake through your awareness. So I'll leave you with this. Do you believe quantum physics can explain consciousness, and that awareness is part of reality itself? Or is this nothing more than science fiction wrapped in mystery? Tell me below. Your view might change someone's mind.